you've been a big film fan your whole life, have you ever wanted to be in the movie or even make the movie? Well, there's no better time than now because everyone knows that kids have the best imaginations, right? Hi, I'm Lisa.
Hi, I'm Jay.
Hi, I'm Lola.
Welcome to Creative Kids Filmmaking! And today we're in the Backlot Studios in Melbourne, which is Australia's first private cinema and event space. We're going to take you behind the scenes and show you all about TV and film production.
There are 3 major steps to making a great film. However, each step is made up of many little steps. We'll try and make this guide as simple as possible.
Step 1, pre-production. Step 2, production. And step 3, post-production.
Let's begin where all good stories begin, at the beginning.
That's right, Jave. Every movie starts with a story, something your movie's going to be about. Those of you who love using your imaginations are going to love this part because ideas can come from anywhere at any time when you least expect it. But every time you get a cool idea, make sure that you write it down because later on you can pick out one of your ideas to turn into your film. So
there are so many different ways to begin writing a script, and with blockbuster Hollywood movies, often they write and rewrite the scripts dozens of times before people can get to the point where the script is ready to be made.
Yeah. Let's take good Hollywood blockbuster film. You'll find that there's patterns in those films that make them a really good watch or successful or satisfying to watch. And I think that's got a lot to do with following successful structures. So, for example, the 3-act structure is a common structure used in Hollywood films.
I always like to think about Shrek because Shrek had a very visible goal. In the first instance, it was all about saving the princess. So for Shrek, we know whether he's going to succeed or fail because he's either going to actually save Princess Fiona or he's not. So that's what we call the outer journey. The inner journey is something that's happening inside the character. For Shrek, when that movie opens, we see him isolated in his swamp cottage. He doesn't want anyone around. We see signs that say, keep out, stay away. By the end of the movie, he's embraced the fairy tale community and is a person of the community. And there you see an inner journey that goes from him being from an isolated guy, isolated ogre, to a community-oriented ogre, and he saved the princess, in a sense. So it's that sort of hero and those 2 journeys, which actually Michael Haig and Christopher Vogler, who are 2 script gurus, identified and talked about. So, people who do my job often look to story analysts who've written books. There are people like Sid Field out there who's talked about the 3-act structure. And movies all tend to follow a similar structure, even if they do it in a unique way. So these are all components of what we're looking for in a great screenplay.
I think you need to watch, obviously, watch a lot of television drama, work out what you like the best and what you think might fit with your skills. Whatever you're drawn to, whatever style you're drawn to, probably means that that's your skill area and that's probably what you'd be best at writing. Also, I think, bizarrely, I'm also going to contradict myself a little because I also think you need to learn to be flexible because if you want to make a living working on lots of different shows, you need to be flexible and you need to be able to adapt your style as well. But it's very helpful to know what your own style is. And so obviously I would practice writing. I was always writing from the time I was about 11. I just wrote non-stop. I would be writing things for myself, studying, trying to work out, watching stories and watching how they unfold and just kind of thinking about that. And also the last thing I would say is you need to develop a thick skin because you have a lot of people, you work very hard and very passionately and then you can have people coming along and saying, oh, no, sorry, and putting a red pen through all your work for various reasons that sometimes have nothing to do with your work. So you just need to be, pragmatic and sensible about that and not be too crushed. You need to kind of be resilient on that level as well so you can cope with that.
Sometimes the writer is also the director. Take Natasha Pincus, for instance. She writes and directs films, and now she's really famous for directing the Gautier video, Somebody That I Used to Know. Over 500 million people have watched it on YouTube.
How can you tell that your music video or film is going to be great? Like, is there something about it that you just think, yes, this is going to be good? Or
I wish you knew that in advance. You always, you've always got two things going on: absolute hope that it's going to be everything you want it to be, and absolute fear that it's not going to be as good as you hope. And they're both happening to you at the same time. And I think those things are the things that drive you to make the best work you can. Because if you were totally comfortable and you knew exactly how it's going to work out, then I guess you wouldn't be driven to try your best, So it always has to be something that's just a little bit out of your reach, that you're not quite sure about, but not so far out of your reach you don't have the skills to achieve. So I guess you never know, but you always have a bit of an inkling that maybe you're onto something good.
Yeah. What are your tips for young budding film directors?
I feel like the best thing you can do is surround yourself with other good people and put a bit of kind of collaborative thought and energy into the project so that it can have a chance to be better or elevate you against everything else. Because something that's going on at the moment is that there's so much stuff being made. YouTube is just full of stuff, and it can be hard to get an audience for your work if you're not really careful about how you could make this particular story work better than you thought originally.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of other brains on the project sometimes to push you to your best.
Yeah.
So the first tip is find good friends that are reliable, that you trust, who have good taste, and work hard, and form a little collective and start working together.
So the director's job is to visualise how the film will look like when it's finished. And they will work with the actors to bring the characters to life and bring out all the emotion, and they will work very closely with the cinematographer and the camera operators to capture the images just the way they want them. It takes a lot of skill to be a good cinematographer. To get most out of your camera, you have to be creative and technical at the very same time.
It's a lot of fun. I often feel guilty about being a cinematographer because I think maybe I should have a real job, or something that's going to change the world, or we're responsible, but I'm just a big kid. Sometimes a film, the camera should be very still and the actors should walk around almost like you're watching a play. But from a selfish point of view, as a cinematographer, I really like to move the camera. So I think probably my favourite shot is a shot that starts wide on a dolly and then moves in or moves across or moves to something motivated by what's happening in the scene.
So it's like you've got the whole set to give an idea of what's going on, and then it's going to the person you're...
It could be as simple as being a wide shot of three people sitting on a couch.
Yeah.
And then the person in the middle says, I really need to talk to you guys about something. I've done a terrible thing. And the camera just moves in and ends up on a close-up of them. So what happens in that shot is that you go from a shot that's a scene about three people talking to one person who's about to confess something terrible. So you're controlling what the audience looks at. Or you might just do a move just where the camera's just moving simply because it's a party scene and everybody's having a good time. And if the camera's too still, the camera's not having the same experience as the people on the set.
Yeah.
So the camera should feel... You have to make sure that the sense of the shot and the feeling of the shot is in tone with what's happening in the scene. And that's why whenever you'll watch a fight scene or something, not always, but very often, for example, if there's a fight scene in a pub or something like that, the camera's often handheld and it moves around and it pans from one person to another because the camera's having the same fear and nervousness as the characters are.
Yeah.
The director isn't the only boss on a film or TV set. The other boss is a producer. The producer...
To get money for a film, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. You want to have big cast because big cast attracts people to the box office. So and ways to do that is you get private investment. With Dust and Glory, there's about $10 million in private investment. There's about $7 or $8 million from sponsors like car manufacturers like Peugeot that won the race in 1953. It was an actual car race around the country.
Wow.
Our government offset rebate gives the producers up to 40% of the budget on a rebate, which is fantastic. And really, it's just running around. A producer is knocking on doors and asking people, whether it's a $500 movie and you're asking friends to crowdfund, or whether it's a $40 million movie, it's always asking people for money.
Look, I think from the starting point, the differences between film and TV have become less. That you probably used to be much more separate between the two industries, but I think particularly over the last 5 or 10 years, the two industries have become much more closely aligned. From a creative point of view, a lot of people who used to work more in films perhaps are working more in television. I think the format's changing. I think television's becoming creatively more interesting. The writing is more complex. The performances are more layered. And at the same time, film's becoming perhaps a bit more restricted.
It's more cartoon if you think about it.
Yeah.
There are much more cartoons.
Yeah, so the different forms, I mean, the type of things we'd go as audiences to see at the cinema in the 70s and the 80s, that kind of storytelling's happening on television now in a more complex way in some cases. So, yeah, it's changing. The audience is leading the industry on a very merry dance. We can do the dance later.
Okay. Every major film and TV production includes an assistant director. A producer hires an assistant director to help organise the actual shoot day. Sometimes there can be heaps of assistant directors. It just depends on how big your film or TV production is going to be. How many locations you're going to use, and how many people are involved, and how many days you might be filming. You see, the bigger your production, the more assistant directors you're going to need. The assistant director makes sure everyone has got their release form signed. They keep track of the time and the shot list. They call out rolling and they clap the slate and they answer everybody's questions on the set to keep the production moving forward. Basically, an assistant director is an absolute lifesaver. Once we have a script, a director, a producer, and our release forms ready, we can now begin casting our film.
Actors are people whose job it is to pretend to be other people on camera. Finding actors is called casting a film. Although there are many actors to choose from, it's a great skill and very important to pick the right actor for the right role.
Could you name a couple of people that are really great actors?
Okay, Robert De Niro is the obvious one, and I'll give you an example what we mean by great acting. There's a film called Taxi Driver. He's known for shaving his head and all that, but it's not about that. There's a wonderful scene where he goes into a grocery shop, and while he's there, a young kid comes in the door who's about to rob the store, and his character has a gun in his back pocket, and he turns around and tries and stops the child from robbing the store. If you watch the film closely, you're going to see what De Niro does is before the kid walks in the door, he's actually buying milk, and what he's doing is he's testing the milk to see which one is the coldest one. His character's dead broke. He can probably afford 1 carton of milk for that week, so he wants the coldest one because it will last longer. Wow. Now that choice is not in the script. That choice makes sense for the character because the character doesn't know that someone's going to walk in the store and rob it. What we call a lesser actor will know that someone's about to walk in the store. They're going to know their lines. So while the director's saying ready, camera, action, they'll be focused on what's about to happen as opposed to the moment, which is the milk. Most people don't think that that's important. That is everything.
Finding actors sometimes is the easiest thing. You just know someone who's perfect and they just slot straight into your film. But generally it's quite difficult. There's usually 2 ways people go about it. If it's, some people like to get casting directors in. So they get someone whose job is to read your script, understand your characters, and then bring people to you. And then you go, yes, I like that person. No, I don't like that person. So it's a collaboration. With me, I've never really used casting directors. I do it myself. And the way I do it is because I'm the writer, I have a very clear image of what I feel that character is. So I will audition people, and eventually someone will walk in who will embody what is in my head for that character, and I will look at them and I'll just say, I think they got it.
Casting's really important. Far more knowledgeable directors and producers than I have said, directing's 90% casting. I think that's a little unfair, but I think that getting the right cast is vital. Look, you're right, we've been really fortunate in some of the people who've responded to the material. I mean, it's nearly always the script and the director and them feeling in some way connected to the story that motivates them to do that.
The camera operator's job is to record the actor's action using cameras. As soon as the assistant director calls rolling, that means the cameras are turned on. Then the director will call action. The actor starts to act and everybody stops when the director calls cut.
I've managed to pin down two of Australia's rising stars in the film industry. Cat Warren, who directs films, and Lola Hewison, who is a gun cinematographer. Hi, girls. So, Kat, what advice can you give kids that want to direct?
Everyone needs to know where it's going to be, what time it's going to be, and what is required. So normally that would be a script and a release form. So they all of the cast and crew needed to have had to read the script in advance before the shoot. The assistant director or any of the crew members need to have a shot list, so you can tick off which shots you've done, so you don't have 10 of one shot and 0 of another. And you have to choose actors that can concentrate for a long period of time on a film set, and that will keep it smooth.
When you're using cameras, make sure the camera battery is on full and you've got an adult around just in case you get stuck. Use a tripod to stop the camera from becoming shaky.
Well, cinematography, like all art form, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And depending upon where you grew up and what your house looked like and what language you speak and whether you come from a nation of, very subdued, quiet people or really loud partying kind of people, it's going to influence your aesthetic and the way you look at the world. So, Australian cinematographers are world class, and so many films that are shot around the world are shot by Australian cinematographers, and you have to wonder why people coming from a relatively small populated country can have such an impact in a market, especially in the US where there's a gazillion cinematographers to compete against. Why are, 6 of 10 films in Hollywood being shot by Australians? And it must be a cultural reason. Australian cinematographers are sort of famous for being able to make great pictures without needing a lot of equipment and time to do it. But we also come from a very bright, sunny, wide landscape.
Yeah.
We have big horizons and massive skies, and so that influences the way we see the world.
So Lola, what are some tips you can give to all those kids out there with the camera that want to start filming?
Some of the tips would be always try and capture all the action that's going on, and make sure sometimes in a film you have to get close-ups, even if you don't even like them that much. It's important to capture the emotion. One of the issues with editing as well is sometimes there's continuity, so just make sure if someone has a blue shirt on and then in the next scene that same person, which it's meant to be in the same day, has a red shirt on, it just doesn't work. Also make sure you get a wide shot in there, because it's almost like a safety shot where you've got everything going on in it, and it's got all the actors doing all their things in that one scene. So it's
if you're shooting outdoors, you're going to have the sunlight. So sometimes it might be too bright or it might be casting lots of shadows. So it's a good idea to bring some white umbrellas on standby or some shades to put up. Now, it is easier to maybe shoot indoors because you can put up your own lights and it becomes a more controlled environment.
Once you're up to the fun part of set design and costume design, and you're on the hunt for cheap costumes, why don't you try eBay or local op shops? And if you need to decorate your set, try some $2 shops. I know they have all sorts of bits and pieces there.
Can you give us some tips for the kids about working on a film set?
Yeah, I guess there's 3 main things to remember. You want to be safe, you want to be as professional as you can, and you want to learn and have a lot of fun. So keeping safe is just about being aware of equipment, lights, heavy things, don't run on sets, trip on cords, that sort of thing. Be as professional as you can, just treat it seriously, and you can do the best job that you can to make fantastic films, and have fun. That's a no-brainer.
And if you do all of those things, you're going to learn a lot and be awesome.
So, we've shot our film, but it's not ready to show anyone yet.
The footage that you've got, which is called rushes, need to go to a film editor, who will choose the best bits and piece together the film or TV episode bit by bit. so that the whole film or TV program comes together and makes sense and is exactly how the director imagined it.
Another thing to keep in mind about editors are they work across a range of different types of finished products. So, for instance, in the very short things, there's television commercials, which can be 15 or 30 seconds long, right through to the very long ones like a television miniseries or a feature film. There's also, of course, different genres. So there can be action films or, romances, or it could be corporate videos. So there are a range of different styles and different audiences that editors are editing for, and it's probably a good idea to think about which area you're interested in, because if that's what you want to do, that's the sort of work you should be doing.
I think you've got to be a storyteller. At film school, when we went through, one of the key pieces of advice I got told was that a film is generally written 3 times. So you've got the writer who writes it. It gets rewritten when you're directing, because how the director sees things and how they put the story together and how they film it tells another story. But the editor deals with what you actually have. So you might have all these grand ideas in the writing and in the directing, but the editor looks at the footage and goes, okay, that didn't work. That beautiful jib shot that goes over the canyon, yeah, we don't need it, doesn't advance the story. So the editor uses what they actually have filmed and then writes the story again through the edit.
When you first learn to be an editor, you can use some free programs on your computer such as iMovie or Windows Movie Maker to get started. But the pros use Final Cut, Adobe Premiere Pro and Avid because they have a lot more features and can do a lot more things that the simpler programs might not be able to do.
An editor is very creative and very patient. Editing can take a long time, and to be a good editor you have to have a really good eye for detail. And like everything else to do with film and TV, you have to practice your craft over and over so that you keep getting better and better.
Lots of big action movies have special effects. Where you see superheroes flying through the skies, or huge explosions, or evil monsters wrecking the world. Spoiler alert, but this is not really happening. It's fake. It's been created by a special effects expert who has built it using software on a computer.
So Sam, when you mix sound for movies, what are the main things you need to consider?
Well, the first big one, I suppose, is sync. When I'm putting sound effects to vision, I need to make sure that they line up what you're hearing with what you're seeing. It's no good if someone throws a punch and the thud of the punch happens before their fist hits who they're punching in the movie or whatever. It's got to be believable. Another thing is consistency of the volume that you're making things. The overall consistency. Some bits of the movie are going to get louder and some bits will be quieter depending on what's happening, but the overall consistency, the average level, has to remain from the start to the finish. Okay. Generally things like the level of a conversation at a normal volume has to be the same in the first scene as in the last scene, or your audience are going to be getting driven mad reaching for the remote all the time. And the other thing is, you have to match the tone of what you're doing and the vibe of what you're doing with what you're seeing on the screen. I suppose, again, the believability is very important, more from a sound design point of view than a mixing point of view. I suppose those areas can cross over quite a lot. But if you have people talking in a bathroom and you've recorded their voices and the sound effects in a carpeted room, those two spaces sound very different, and so it's not going to be believable when you see them talking in a bathroom and the words are coming out sounding like they're not actually in that room.
Okay.
That's the main things.
Finally, don't forget to add your credits. That's what you see at the end of your film. It's a list of everyone and everything that has been involved in your film. You better not forget anyone, especially me.
For the mainstream cinemas, they want to basically make sure that every film they've got is going to take the most money it possibly can. For those that have a little bit of an upmarket audience as well, they'll look at some upmarket type films, some art house films, but primarily the art house films will play in traditional art house cinemas, and they will just pick the films that are going to give them the best box office return. The more people that come to see them, the more people buy things from the candy bar as well, and they can maximise their return. the producers of film make their money back by all revenue streams. So a cut goes back to distribution, from which we pay royalties to the producers and we keep a share ourselves. The same thing happens then with DVD, with what we call EST, which is electronic sell-through. There's pay TV, there's free TV, there's airlines. So every single window, the distribution arm keeps some money and some of the money goes back to the producers. If the film is successful, they make money from all revenue streams. If the film is not successful, then really no one makes any money.
If you need any more information, just go to the Kids Corner on the Far Out Films page.
Well, you must be well on your way to becoming a professional filmmaker by the end of this episode.
Well, that's a wrap. Bye.
Bye.